What should you do if you make a mistake in your job interview? In this video, I'm going to cover 10 tips for fixing up a mistake in a job interview. Hi there, I'm Dr. Anthony Llewellyn, the career doctor, and each year I do around 700 hours of coaching with various clients for various job interviews. And one of the things that clients often ask me about is for advice on what to do if they make a mistake or an error in their job interview. So what should you do if you make an error or stuff up? In this video, I'm going to cover 10 top tips for what to do if you make a mistake in your job interview. So let's get on with it, starting with tip number 1. So it may seem obvious, but prevention is often better than cure. And the first thing that you can do to address mistakes in a job interview is to obviously minimize the chance of error in the first place. So my first tip is about preparation. The most obvious thing that you can do to prevent yourself from making a mistake is to give yourself plenty of time to research the role and practice possible interview questions. It's amazing that when I do surveys of doctors, generally about half or more tell me that for their most recent job interview, they did no or very little preparation. Now, I've covered off on how you should practice in a bunch of other videos like this one here. So let's assume that you've done this preparation, but you're still worried about making a mistake. Hey, it happens to the best of us. It's happened to me. And also, sometimes you don't have a lot of time to prepare and practice. So what should you do if you realize that you've made an awful mistake in answer to one of these questions that are posed to you? Well, tip number 2, I call the recover quickly and move on quickly technique. Now, if you realize mid-answer that you've made a fundamental error, for example, maybe it's a clinical question and you got the dose of a medication wrong. Well, in this case, it's best to apologize straight away and correct your mistake. Then move on without dwelling on it. Whilst making mistakes in a medical job interview can be particularly fatal, correcting yourself most likely be seen as a good sign. After all, errors do occur in medicine, and if you can recognize one in yourself, then you are showing a good trait. But as I say, don't dwell on it, keep the interview going, don't give the panel a chance to dwell on your mistake. That leads me on to tip number 3, which is don't disrupt the interview flow to correct a mistake in a job interview. One thing that you don't want to do is disrupt the interview flow in order to correct a mistake. So if you do realize halfway through the interview, say at question number 3, that you made a mistake in question number 1, make yourself a little note. Write yourself a quick bullet point on your paper if you can. Then when it comes to the time for the wrap up of the interview, the end of the interview, take the opportunity to add a quick correction at that point. Don't make a big deal of your error, just quickly point out that you want to correct something you said earlier and state your correction. This is so much better than pausing your response in the middle of another question to go back to the original question. Don't do that. What to do if you have a mental block? We've all been there. You get asked a question, actually happened to me the other day, that you know you prepared really well for, but your mind turns to fog. Perhaps you struggle to remember a term or a diagnosis or the name of someone important that you want to mention. So tip number 4 is to buy yourself some time. The first thing to do in this situation is to avoid panicking. Ask the interviewer if they can repeat the question. You can also use this time to think. There's also nothing wrong with asking for a few moments or taking a sip of water. Now, if you're still struggling after all this, then answer the part of the question that you can answer. This is much better than providing no answer at all. Again, some additional information may come to you by the time the end of the answer is or time of the interview comes to a close. If it's at the end of the interview, request to add some clarification to your answer at the end of the interview. What to do if you're asked an odd or confusing question? If you've done your preparation effectively, you should generally be able to anticipate the intent of each interview question. But occasionally interview panels design weird questions which the reasons are not immediately obvious. Sometimes these questions are designed to determine whether you have the skills or attitudes required to complete the job that you're applying for. So if you are confused by a question or the angle in which you should respond to it, always try to bring your answer back to demonstrating a skill or a quality you possess that shows that you're able to do the job. This is an excellent time for you to just quickly check your job alignment table for some inspiration. And if you're wondering what job alignment is, I'll link a video in the description below and up here again for you. So tip number 5 is to ask for clarification. If the intent of the question is unclear, then ask for clarification. You may want to ask the interviewer for clarification or perhaps to put the question in a slightly different way. Even better, ask them which particular selection criteria they are wanting you to address in the question. Tip number 6, make an apology but don't overdo it. If you do make a mistake during an interview, a simple apology can quickly remedy the situation. But as I've said already, don't let this linger. Try to turn the interview back to a positive straight afterwards. So this can be followed up by tip number 7, which is focus back on what you bring to the role. Once you've apologized, focusing on your professionalism and your qualifications and your experience can help save your job interview. For example, if you do make an error discussing a clinical scenario, try to point out how you are very systematic in your clinical practice and all the things you've learnt to do to remove errors from your practice. Tip number 8, thank them for their time. Even if you feel you've made a really bad mistake in a job interview, be sure to end the conversation on a positive note. The best way to do this is by telling them how thankful you are for their time and attention. This could potentially balance out some of your mistakes. Tip number 9, learn from your mistakes. Again, this may seem obvious, but every job interview performance is a chance to try out new things and to get better. Use your experience to be more fully prepared for the next interview. If you make a mistake in a job interview, learn from your mistakes. Learn to present the best version of yourself in the next interview. For example, if you realize you were thrown by a number of the questions asked during your interview, then write as many of them down as you can remember, and then practice these questions for next time. Tip number 10. My final tip is to not be too hard on yourself. Forgive yourself for making a mistake. Again, try to use your mistakes as a learning experience to make future interview performances more impressive. And most importantly, forgive yourself because mistakes do happen. By the way, if you are wanting help with your next job interview, you should check out my job interview skills course, linked up here and in the description below. And once again, I'd love you to subscribe, to turn on notifications and like and share this video, and I'll see you in the next video.